You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hey everyone, I'm Jim Fitzpatrick.
I'm Cheyenne Malone. Welcome to Inside Automotive. So as you know, as the auto industry does transition to a much greener EV future, what's happening to non-carb states like Kentucky?
On today's show, we are joined by Jason Wilson, the president of the Kentucky Automobile Dealers Association, to give us his perspective on EVs today and what demand looks like in his state. So welcome into the show, Jason.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim. Good to see you. Cheyenne, welcome. Good to see you at CBT. So looking forward to seeing you in future episodes as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today. So kind of talk to us, bring us up to speed on the EV sentiment really in the state of Kentucky, because I feel like there was so much excitement around the country even at the beginning, but now we're starting to see states kind of pump the brakes.
I think that's definitely an accurate way to put it. Look, what we have said from the onset, whether it's Kentucky or any state, and this messaging has been heard loudly over the last couple of years, is that the car dealers are all in on EVs, right? We are the ambassadors of technology and have been for generations and will continue to do so. So while we are all in, we are also all in the real world. And the real world as it stands today create some challenges and some differences as it relates to a carb state, large metro areas that are have a far more advanced infrastructure that's able to handle these types of things versus states like the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where we have smaller towns throughout the state, where we have range anxiety is a real thing. The chargers that are out there, and this is throughout the country, how many of them are actually working when you pull up to one? What are high-speed chargers versus a traditional charger? So all that plays into it. Meanwhile, the dealers have their very real concerns in that they're having to fund this in a lot of ways as the OEMs are making certain requirements for their facilities and dealerships in the forms of millions of dollars.
Right.
And the reality is, we're not sure how this is really going to play out, as this is truly a government-driven initiative, whereas in the past, as we evolve through the car industry and we've seen all the changes, all those changes come based on the demands of the consumer. Right. And we don't have a situation here where the consumers, whether you're in a large metro area or wherever you are in the country, where the majority of consumers are clamoring for this technology or wanting this in their next vehicle.
That's right.
They consider it, and we can talk more about that a little bit later as far as what that really means. But so again, that's a very high level, what the realities are today and where the concerns are of the dealers.
Sure. I would imagine, Jason, to just kind of follow up on that, is that affordability. I mean, for the consumers in Kentucky, they've got to be looking at, as from a standpoint of what is this vehicle actually going to cost us? Because as we know, all EVs cost more money than a combustion engine vehicle will cost them. Yep. So talk to us about that, because affordability is at the top of many families' budget for a vehicle.
Absolutely, and currently, EVs are much more expensive than ICE vehicles.
Yeah.
I think last I looked, the average was in around mid-60s for an EV.
Wow.
Comparatively speaking, you're in the 50s and on a new vehicle. And again, look, it's all expensive. The cost of vehicles have gone up dramatically over the years, and affordability really is becoming an issue, especially when we're dealing with inflation, higher interest rates, equaling higher payments. All those things, certainly go together. Mm-hmm. So that absolutely factors in, and you couple that with some of the unknowns on EVs as it relates to we've gotten to the point now, and we all can remember a time when vehicles were getting 60, 70,000 miles on it. It was like, it's time to start looking for a new vehicle. Yeah. Well, that's nothing now. I mean, our modern manufactured vehicles are getting a couple, 200,000-300,000 miles on. Is not uncommon. Yeah. And consumers, we don't know what that really looks like for battery vehicles yet. Mm-hmm. So that's a consideration for consumers when they're looking to spend all that money. And that's why I find in some of the surveys you do see, when asked, would you consider an EV? Well, if you're on the market, you're pretty much open to considering anything. And I think what we're seeing right now is the trend where we have EVs now starting to stack up and it's not matching the polling, and they're not being delivered at the speed and pace at which they were, and it's a real issue right now.
Yeah.
And not to mention, when you talk expenses too, I mean, these charging stations are not free. That's something that I got a rude awakening. I'm like, okay, it's not as easy as I thought financially.
Yeah.
Talk to us, Jason, about just Kentucky overall as a whole, and when it comes to getting on board with these other CARB regulations, other states rather. Where do you see you fitting in?
Well, I don't see the state of Kentucky becoming a CARB state, right? Kentucky legislators in the Commonwealth of Kentucky are not going to sign off on following what is decided upon in California. That's just not going to happen here, as is true with a number of states. And it's sort of interesting. There hasn't been a ton of polling, surprisingly, on consumers' attitudes toward EVs. But there was a Pew Research Center poll that came out just a couple weeks ago, about mid-July. That was interesting as far as people's overall attitudes towards EVs. And not surprisingly, you have a younger demographic that's more open to it than an older. Those in metro, more open to it, that's rural. And depending on the age, that age group, the interest in EVs drops dramatically as far as considering and would consider an EV and whatnot. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, it also varies by political affiliation. Those more conservative or those in red states are not really interested in EVs, and those in blue states and those areas are more interested. And not to politicize it, but I think that goes to the usage of those vehicles. Again, depending on how you're using those vehicles, and I think I agree with how Jim Farley phrased it just a few days ago in an interview that he did, where he stated, if you're in Wyoming and you're hauling a fifth wheeler, an EV is probably not the best option for you. So I think all those things come into play. And the concerning part, again, is as we talk about this EV revolution and creating all these vehicles, it becomes concerning in that, okay, we're going to build all these, and where's that demand coming from? Because based on what we're seeing now in the early signs, we're not seeing it. And the concern is, are the early adopters going to become the only adopters as it relates to this technology? Everyone's just saying it's going to happen.
Are your dealers telling you that the EV inventory is starting to pile up?
Yes. In fact, literally just a few moments before this interview, I spoke with one of my dealers who has the brands that consumers will go to look at EVs, right? He has Toyota, he has Kia, he has Hyundai, he has a number of these EVs, and in his words, they're not opening the doors on these vehicles, and they're prepared to sell them at a loss, and the reward for selling them at a loss is getting another one. So it becomes a scary
not
situation.
So fast.
Right. And meanwhile, and this is an important point, I think, by and large, car dealers represent small business America. This is Main Street America. Yes, there are publics out there, whatnot, but the everyday dealer would be considered a small business. So they're being asked to invest millions of dollars in their own infrastructure, their own facilities. And it becomes very concerning when the early stages of this, they're already in the, selling vehicles potentially at a loss. And that's not a good feeling by any means.
And when it comes to some of the dealerships that you talk to, is there a common denominator when it comes to challenges in your state, across the country, or just does it matter?
I think part of the common denominator as far as concerns are the OEMs, and I'm not going to paint all of them with this broad brush, but a number of them don't seem to differentiate between a CARB state and what would be required of those dealers, right, to be able to upgrade and meet the demands and whatnot, versus a small town rural dealer that just did not have that demand. And the ask of dealers is to do these things that have a very distinct cost, and depending on where you are, could be much more expensive than other parts of the country that doesn't have that infrastructure. It's very troublesome. And when dealers are told they have a choice to either opt in or not on the EV program, well, when the manufacturer's saying we're going all EVs and you choose not to opt in, what does that look like for your future as a new car dealer for that manufacturer?
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, the confusion for the dealers on this issue is mind-boggling, right?
The other part of this that gets concerning just as we speak to the government aspect of this, right, which is really creating these standards and pushing this agenda, if you will. When we look at it in total, and I saw the Cox Automotive study that came out recently, and the anticipation is EVs will be going down through the years as it relates to building them, things of that nature. Well, maybe, one of the things that's concerning is of all the minerals critical to EV batteries, China has control of that. China really controls this market. China produces the lithium ion batteries. Currently, they're producing about 75% of those.
Oh, so we're in good shape then.
Yeah, so we have that going for us. So when you factor all of those things in, I think there's reason to have a lot of concerns of just going down this road. Whereas what we produce in America, as far as these mineral goes, is less than 1% currently.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, interesting. And Jason, was specific to your organization, any other new initiatives that you're dealing with or looking to move forward with?
Well, look, I think like every association, each year there's new challenges. We're going to work with our OEM partners on behalf of our dealers, but there's always new challenges, whether that relates to franchise laws that we review and look at every year, and strengthening those to ensure that consumers are still able to go to their franchise dealers and get their vehicles and ask and answer questions and those sort of things. So we're going to continue. That's always top of mind for that being the case. And interestingly enough, as we move towards EV, one of the things you might expect is that consumers just want to go on a website and order the EV and whatnot. Well, that's not the case. By a large number, they still want to utilize the dealer as that resource of information, as that touch point, because it is new technology and there are so many unknowns. But again, we're always going to be looking at those franchise issues, and we'll continue to do so as we move forward.
Let me ask you this. What initiatives are left on your plate in addition to this topic that we've discussed today at the association that you want to get done before the end of the year?
Well, the things that we look at too, right now, this time of year, as with most associations, this time we really tee up our legislative agenda for 2024. So what we're doing right now with our team and our leadership is sort of taking a look and deciding what initiatives that we want to take on this coming go around. Our legislative session was very active last year. We did get a number of things done that we were pleased about, and now it's a matter of what we want to look at this coming year. So that's what's sort of happening in association land right now. Mm-hmm. You're putting together sort of your game plan. In our state, for example, we do district meetings in October. We do it sort of the traveling road show throughout the state to see our dealers, and our legislators come as well, because it's really an opportunity for us to educate our legislators what's going on in our industry. Right. And it's been so helpful for us when we help us move the ball forward legislatively. So those meetings are important. But right now we're working on sort of setting that agenda up now, as most of my peers are.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. Jason Wilson, president of the Kentucky Automobile Dealers Association. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been very informative. Best of luck to you as the year moves along.
Thank you. Great to see both of you again. Cheyenne, again, welcome. Enjoyed our time together as always, and look forward to seeing you down the road.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.